In this video, we will be looking at some of the basic principles of navigation in the Mirage 2000C. We will go over some of the features of the PCN navigation control panel in more detail, discuss waypoint parameters that can be set, learn how to edit existing waypoints and add new waypoints from the cockpit, and briefly touch on the use of the but additionnel or barred waypoint offsets. Hello fellow virtual aviators, we are back in the despicably delightful Mirage 2000C, and today we'll be looking at basic navigation. Now, the primary method of navigation in the Mirage is by waypoints, geographical locations, the parameters of which have been programmed into the aircraft's computer and to which the INS inertial navigation system can direct us to. To demonstrate the use of these, we are going to fly a simple patrol. We have taken off from Incirlik in southern Turkey and are going to navigate to the airfields of Hatay, Basel al-Assad and Hama. Waypoints for these locations have already been pre-programmed, ostensibly by the crew chief, but in reality in the mission editor. The techniques we are going to use are conducted in Navigation Master Mode, one of the three main modes of the Mirage 2000C. But before that, we need to make sure that we aligned our INS system correctly. This we did in our cold start, and also have it set to Nav mode on the PCM mode knob, and to normal or N mode on the INS operational knob. To ensure that we are in Navigation Master Mode, we must ensure that the CNM switch on our throttle is set to neutral, and that we do not have any stores selected on the PCA panel. The HUD symbology in Navigation Master Mode is fairly straightforward. It has the usual heading, tape, pitch ladder, airspeed, altimeter, but you will see that there is no weapons information displayed on the left-hand side. Let's quickly go over the features and functions of the PCN navigation control panel. The panel has a double-line display. The top display shows information about the various parameters associated with navigation, whilst the bottom display shows the waypoint we are interacting with, which waypoint we are using, and various other indicator lights currently not showing. Up to 20 waypoints can be stored in the navigation control panel, and the number on the left-hand side of the bottom display indicates the waypoint that we are currently interacting with, so here 00. I can change this if I press the prep button, followed by the number of the waypoint that we want, so 01 has selected waypoint 1, and you can see there the parameters associated with waypoint 1. Let's change it to 2. And let's change it to 3. Now, waypoint 00 is a special case. It isn't actually a waypoint at all. It's actually the current location of your aircraft according to the INS system. And as you can see there, as I fly, the position is slightly changing. The INS gyroscopic instruments aboard the aircraft are measuring changes in my position, and this is being reported on the display. We have a keypad which allows us to input information into the system. It's the standard numerical keypad, and you can see we have a north, south, east and west option on 2, 8, 6 and 4 respectively. You can also see that we have pluses and minuses on the 1 and 7 keys and the 3 and 9 keys, and this will allow us to input positive and negative values. The pluses on the 1 and 3 keys also allow us to interact with the parameters on the top display. EFF stands for the French word effacement, which means erase, and INS stands for insertion, the French word obviously for insert or enter. This is the INS parameter selector and changes what is being shown on the display. Some of these parameters are grouped together. On the left-hand side, we have 3 parameters that are grouped as WPT waypoint. These refer to our programmed waypoints and are called buts in the French cockpit. On the right hand side we have three similar parameters that are linked together, here linked with OFS or offset. In the French cockpit this is known as a BAD. We'll go through waypoint offsets a little bit later, but for now let's just consider the actual waypoints. My parameter switch is currently set to LG on the waypoint side. This stands for latitude and longitude, meaning that for our currently selected waypoint, this is what is shown on the display. A single turn to the left selects Alt or altitude, displaying the altitude in feet and meters. Our H and DS stands for runway heading and desired slope. These are currently unset, but are used during an INS landing, which we did in our previous video. DT and DTM show the distance and relative bearing to the selected waypoint. Although this information will be repeated on your HSI, it can be useful to have on the display here. So if we select waypoint 1 as our destination and as our prep, we can see there that the distance to it is just over 52 nautical miles at a relative bearing of 133.7 degrees. Remember that the prep waypoint is what is being displayed here on the PCN, so make sure that your prep waypoint number matches your destination waypoint if you wish to use this. TR and VS represent the time remaining and the ground speed of your aircraft. So the left parameter is the time remaining, which is just over 5 minutes, and you can see that it is increasing because I am flying away from the selected waypoint. The ground speed of my aircraft, as shown on the right parameter, is 624 knots. Now, for whatever reason, the next two parameters are actually labelled incorrectly. They're labelled round the wrong way. One of these parameters is the wind direction and speed, and the other parameter is the magnetic variation for the part of the world that you are in. This will have been pre-programmed by your crew chief. So the parameter in the 6 o'clock position is the wind direction and speed. As you can see there, the direction is changing on the left parameter, and the speed is 000, as in this mission I haven't set any wind. The parameter at the 5 o'clock position, which is labelled WSWD, is actually the magnetic variation, and as we can see there, the variation is plus 5.2 degrees. This allows you to select either true heading or magnetic heading on your HSI, and is useful when interacting with other flight members or your controller. The parameter in the 12 o'clock position, RDTD, is the route desired, time desired function, and we have used route desired in a previous video. The three parameters under the offset label we shall be using later in this video. The luminosity knob here allows you to test the display to show everything that can be, and also if you twist it, you can adjust the brightness of the display. This button here is the validate button. This is useful during the INS alignment. And then we have a BAD button. This is our offset button, which we'll look at later. Our INS update button and our mark point button. These again we will look at in the future. So my patrol mission information has already been pre-programmed into my PCN navigation panel, and I want to select the first waypoint that I want to fly to. I've currently just left in Churlick and I want to fly to Hatay, which is waypoint number 1. So let's select that on the PCN panel. We're going to select the destination and type in 01. That the display on the PCN panel didn't change there, and that's because my prep waypoint is still 00. This is what is being displayed here. But because my destination waypoint is 01, my flight instruments are interacting with the information stored under it. Having selected waypoint 1 as my destination, my HSI, my horizontal situation indicator shown here, is displaying the relevant information required to navigate to that waypoint. It is currently set to magnetic navigation, but I can use this knob here to switch it to true heading there. So I'm going to leave it in magnetic. I prefer to work in magnetic. The long, thick arrow with the double line indicates the heading I must fly to get to my waypoint. So I must maneuver my aircraft so that the point of that arrow lines up with this white triangle here, my navigation marker. The distance to the waypoint is shown in the center on the numerical gauge. So flying in the direction of the arrow for that distance will bring me to the selected waypoint. I can also use HUD symbology to navigate. I have this house shape symbol here, which is my steering cue. Essentially, I need to put my velocity vector indicator in the center. And I also have this information here, which tells me the distance, 50 nautical miles to waypoint 1. So we'll use the HUD symbology as it is the easiest. Let's maneuver our aircraft to place our velocity vector indicator into the center of the navigation steering cue. We can also see on the HSI the arrow, which we can use as a guide. So let's just bring her into the correct heading. And level out and straighten up. So flying at this heading for 45 nautical miles, we will arrive at waypoint 1. If I want to check the parameters of my selected waypoint, I can always do this at any time by selecting it as the preparation waypoint. So prep 01, and I can see the latitude and longitude and the altitude of that waypoint. Another quick way to get your prep waypoint to match your destination waypoint is to simply press the prep button twice in succession. And you can see there that the prep and destination waypoints match. The selected destination waypoint is also displayed on the VTB as a plus symbol here. So this is useful in giving you situational awareness of where your waypoints are. My current scale is set to 40 miles, so roughly between me and the 40 miles I'm at 30 miles, and I can see that that's correct on the HSI. By selecting a waypoint as my prep waypoint and pressing the validate button, this gives me an additional piece of information and turns the waypoint into what's called a tactical waypoint. I can actually display 5 of these on the VTB at any one time. So let's continue our journey on towards waypoint 1. Once you get within 10 nautical miles of a waypoint, it actually becomes displayed on the heads-up display. You can see there a crosshair representing the location of the waypoint, and if you look very closely you'll see that that coincides with Hattay Airport. If the waypoint crosshair moves out of the heads-up display, it will revert back to the navigation steering cue, and you'll see that as I pass over the waypoint, the symbology will change. My steering cue is now pointing in the opposite direction to show that the waypoint is now behind me, and I can see also that the distance to the waypoint is starting to increase. This information is repeated on the HSI. So let's move on to our next waypoint. We can either select this manually by pressing destination and then selecting 02, like so. If we wish, we can review this by selecting 02 as our prep waypoint also. Another way of doing this, if we set it back to waypoint 1, is to use the waypoint increment buttons, which are over here on the left hand side. The plus and the minus here. Obviously the plus will increase us by 1 on the waypoint, so pressing that will now move us on to waypoint 2. So let's head there, let's steer to the right, and we've got quite a journey, just over 66 nautical miles. Now in our kneeboard we have a navigation map here showing the waypoints that are planned, and I can see that my crew chief has actually made a mistake. Waypoint 2 isn't where it's supposed to be, it's out to sea and it should be over Bashar al-Assad airport. So let's just get that information for that airport. We can do this from the F10 map, and we are going to edit the information on waypoint number 2. So let's select it with the prep button, double press to get it to match the destination, and we need to edit the latitude and longitude and altitude. So we're going to press the 1 key, the 1 plus, to select the left parameter. Is it a northing or a southing? It's a northing, and then we're going to input the information and press insert. We'll do the same for the right hand parameter, so to select that we're going to press the plus on the right hand side, the 3 button. Is it an easting or a westing? It's an easting, and we'll input the longitude here. Insert. Let's change over to altitude, and we are going to put it into the left hand field, which is the feet field, so plus 93 feet above sea level. And immediately I can see that I need to change my course because my waypoint has moved. So let's bring us back into the correct heading. This heading here, 30 nautical miles to go. You'll see that it doesn't change on your tactical map on your kneeboard, and why should it? The crew chief does not have a magic crayon. Whilst we're flying towards waypoint 2, we'll have a look at some of the other parameters. We've got DT, DTM, and this is just a repeater of the distance and the heading that I need to achieve in order to get to waypoint 2. So this is just a repeat of information on the HSI. So 27 nautical miles at a bearing of 199.4. The next one, TRVS, which is the time remaining and the ground speed, is useful. So this is giving me an estimated time of arrival given my current speed to waypoint 2. So 4 minutes and 10 seconds from now I should arrive at Bashar al-Assad airport. As I increase my speed, you will see that the time remaining is decreasing rapidly, which makes sense. Now, I want to finish my patrol at Aleppo, but I do not have this programmed as a waypoint, so I'm going to add this as waypoint number 4. So let's go down to the PCN panel, and we'll select the prep function, and select waypoint 4. We'll change the parameter switch to LG, and we can see that there's no information stored in there. We input the new data in pretty much exactly the same way as we did when we edited the waypoint. The waypoint I edited, waypoint 2, as I can see, has appeared on the HUD, and it is indicating Bashar al-Assad airport. Let's advance our waypoint number with the plus button on the left hand side. We now have waypoint 3 selected as our destination. Let's select it again as a prep just so we have the information on the PCN display. And I can use my HUD symbology or HSI to steer and navigate to it. Now my controller at Hammer has contacted me to say that there is an enemy command vehicle close by, and I want to be able to locate that using my INS system. Now, rather than setting another waypoint on it, I can use a waypoint offset. This uses the existing waypoint as a reference. Hypothetically, my controller has contacted me telling me that from the Hammer waypoint, the target vehicle is at a true bearing of 053 and a distance of 1.17 nautical miles, as indicated by the ruler tool in the center of the screen here. I'm going to use this information to create what is called a BAD in the French cockpit, the Waypoint Offset. This allows me to maintain Hammer as a waypoint so I don't lose this information, whilst also gaining tactical information about my target. For this to work, I also need the difference in altitude. So if I change the parameter switch to altitude, I can say that the waypoint 3 at Hammer has an altitude of 984. My target vehicle, according to the F10 map, has an altitude of 979. So the difference in altitude is -5 feet. So we're going to use the offset parameters on the right-hand side. And let's do the altitude first. So if we select the delta altitude, the difference in altitude, we want the feet, which is the left parameter, and it's -5 feet. Insert that. In terms of the target's position, we are using polar coordinates, so we are going to use the rho theta option. So we'll change the knob to that. The rho represents the distance, and the theta represents the bearing relative to the selected waypoint. So as we saw earlier, we have a distance of 1.17 nautical miles. So let's input that into the left parameter. So that's 0117, insert. And theta, the relative bearing from the waypoint, is 053. So we'll select that, and it's 0530. Insert. Currently my flight instruments are still using waypoint 3 as a reference, but if we push this button here, the barred offset button, you'll see on the HSI that it changes. Let me just undo that and redo that. There is a slight change when I select the barred offset waypoint. With this setting on, my flight instruments are now directing me towards the offset target rather than the waypoint itself. On the heads-up display, I know that I'm targeting an offset 26 nautical miles to waypoint 3, and the asterisk indicates that the offset is in effect. So let's see if we can use our offset to pick out the enemy vehicle. So we're going to descend slightly just out of this cloud. And you'll see now the waypoint crosshair represents the offset. There's the airfield off to the right hand side, and the crosshair this time is now pointing out the target. So let's go and deal with him. You will see that the offset marker on the hood is not 100% accurate. This could be for various reasons. Maybe my offset information was incorrect, or maybe I've had some INS drift. But let's go and deal with them. You'll see there the target's slightly off the crosshair. Bang, bang, bang. Shack 1 times BMD. Let's head for our terminal airport, Aleppo, which we programmed to Waypoint 4, so let's switch off the offset mode, and we'll select Waypoint 4 using the destination button. Do the rest of that to get the same. And we're 63 nautical miles away. Well, as ever, I hope that was useful for you. Some basic skills that are essential in every Mirage 2000C pilot. Feel free to do the usual thing, like, subscribe, comment and share. But until next time, virtual aviators, I look forward to seeing you online in the skies. This is Reiver saying, last call.